Hello there, so congratulations. You did it. I'm so proud of you that I don't even know what to say. You actually finished creating your own map. Now that the hard part's done, you can finally move on to the feedback stage, and soon enough, your map will be ranked. You just need to get a few people to mod it, and to do that, how do you do that? While mapping can be challenging, most people find the act of getting feedback or mods to be the truly hardest part of the ranking process. The world of modding exists mostly outside of the game client, and so there's an added layer of mystery to it. Who do you ask for mods, and where do you do so? Actually, with a little research, that's easy to figure out. What this old wiki article doesn't explain though is 1. The effectiveness of these methods, and 2. What makes finding feedback the hardest part of the ranking process. So how about we weigh the pros and cons of each mod finding method to figure both of these out. First up is the chat room for mod requests in-game. This is definitely the lowest effort way to find mods, and in turn, the least effective. Mod Recs works by mappers linking their maps, then modders picking out whatever maps they want to mod from the chat. It's simple and may have worked in the past, but it's useless when there's next to no modders looking for maps to mod here. The only people who actually use Mod Recs to find maps to mod are inactive optimists looking at the channel through a gilded lens, and the occasional new modder who wants to try modding without much dedication. The sad truth is that the mod request chat room is where hopes of receiving feedback go to die. So pros, it's easy to use, takes like 5 seconds. Cons, there's extremely low chances of it actually, working. Nobody checks the maps here, so what's the point? In a smaller community, it may have been active and actually worked, but as Osu's expanded, it's grown less and less effective. What's grown inversely though, from what I've seen anyway, has been the modding queues. This subforum is entirely dedicated to finding and requesting mods. Modders here create threads, called queues, wherein mappers can post for feedback on their maps. Queue owners mod the maps linked in their respective queues, and the world of mapping continues to push forward. That would be nice, wouldn't it? Modding queues may be active compared to mod recs, but for a new mapper, they can still be troublesome. In a few ways, they unintentionally overcomplicate themselves and exclude mappers who lack experience. The first step to explaining why this is understanding how buzzwords come into play. As I said a few weeks ago, buzzwords are never going to disappear from Osu, and that's especially true for the case of modding queues. The only people interested in managing mod queues are those invested in modding to some degree already, meaning they know and use a bunch of fancy mapping words. To read the rules of a queue and interpret whether or not your map fits within those rules, you need to understand those words too. So let's look at a few scenarios. In my own queue, I make a post saying open for 2 NM slots. Open means the queue is open to requests, 2 slots means 2 openings for maps, and NM is an acronym for normal mod. The clarification word here seems unnecessary since a normal mod is just a mod, but some people do find it useful when distinguishing between different types of mods, so it's used anyway. With all that in mind, the appropriate response to this would be 2 users posting their maps, followed by my own post saying closed, which indicates that the queue is no longer open for any more requests. Okay, cool, that's really easy to understand. Building from that, let's say the next time I open my queue I say open for 3 M4m slots. Read the rules before posting, plus a link to one of my own maps. This is getting a little more complicated. The queue is open for 3 requests this time, but they're not normal mod requests. They're M4m requests. This is another acronym which makes a little more sense. It's mod for mod, an exchange of mods basically. Because this is my queue specifically, it means the user who's requesting needs to mod my map, then I mod theirs in return. Looking at the second line though, read the rules before posting. Checking the thread's first post for a list of rules is something that should be done even without mention. In this case, there's 2 rules. Use a placeholder and no tickets, both of which are kind of ambiguous. In the modding queues, placeholders are exclusively used in association with mod for mod requests. A placeholder is like a reservation of a slot, indicating that a user will be modding the queue owner's map. So because my queue has 3 slots and says to use placeholders, I would close it after the first 3 people use their placeholders. When each of these 3 people mod my map, I'll mod theirs in return. What placeholders are not used for is reserving a slot when a queue is closed. That kind of defeats the purpose of a queue, it just turns it into another long list of maps like mod recs. Back to the rules though, if a user mods my map but doesn't have a map available for me to mod in return, they'd receive a ticket. Whenever they do have a map ready, they can metaphorically exchange that ticket for my mod. In this case though, the rule states that tickets aren't allowed, so it's expected that someone posting their placeholder understands that they need a map ready beforehand. While my queue here had only 2 rules, that's pretty rare for a queue. My favorite kinds of queues are the ones without rules at all, but most of them have tons of restrictions, which is part of their appeal. Modding queues are more active than mod recs because they're much more personal. It's not just a list of maps, it's a list of maps which fit exactly what a modder is interested in modding. That could be songs of specific genres or tempos, or even maps of specific difficulties. All of these and anything else you could think of are explained in a queue's unique rules, which need to be read to fully utilize the modding queues. I've seen countless times that new mappers don't pay attention to the minor details in a queue's rules, which only leads to disappointment. So wording and rules are both issues for new mappers, but that's not all. What most often restricts new mappers from finding mods through mod queues is none of those things. Every mapper needs mods, and so the modding queues are competitive. Really competitive. Queues for normal mods are usually open in one of 2 ways, through a first come first serve policy or through selection from a pool of options. The problem for new mappers with first come first serve is that it rewards only dedicated mappers. When I open my queue like this, I usually receive mod requests within 1 minute of the opening post, either from people who subscribe to the thread or people who desperately refresh this page. New mappers aren't included in either of those groups, since they're not really involved enough in mapping to feel the need to take those measures. Queues run through selection from a group of maps usually prioritize more experienced mappers as well, just in a different way. Most modders find it easier to mod maps from people who have a decent knowledge of what they're doing, and so mod queue owners select maps which fit that criteria. For example, if a queue gets 10 requests, the modder may only take the 2 most well mapped. It goes without saying that a new mapper's map wouldn't be either of those. It's not all terrible though. Unlike normal mod queues, mod for mod queues aren't nearly as competitive. You can always find mod for mod queues open, so if you're confident in your modding skills, that's always an option. But, well, I don't think I've met a new mapper who is confident with mod for mod either though. Life's tough. So the pros of modding queues: they're active and you're guaranteed a response through mod for mod requests. Cons: you need to know about modding terminology beforehand. They're competitive, they prioritize experienced mappers, and you're expected to know something about mapping if you try out mod for mod queues. Overall, it's hard to recommend modding queues to new mappers either. Of course, because every modding queue is different, there's still opportunities, but they're few and far between. The only other method for finding mods is personally messaging people for feedback. As a new mapper, you probably aren't close with anyone who's capable of helping. Your friends may have some advice to give, but if they're not mappers, you'll only be able to go so far. Anyone else you can think of is probably a big name mapper or modder who's swarmed with requests on a daily basis. A new mapper without a reputation wouldn't have a chance of receiving a mod from them. The smaller names who may be less swarmed and more willing to mod aren't easy to find either, since if they were, they would be just as overwhelmed as the big name guys. So pros: none. Cons: you're screwed. Searching for mods in any way is harsh because there's a huge difference in supply and demand. In mod recs, there's an excess of people posting maps and not enough people modding them. In modding queues, there's more opportunities to receive mods, but also more obstacles in the way. And in private conversation, there's low chances of success unless you know the right people. So given the pros and cons of each method, which is the best way to receive mods as a new mapper? They're all equally terrible. Not everything has an easy answer, and that's something you'll have to accept if you want to get into mapping. Just as there's no perfect way to find free mods, there's no perfect way to map something. A song can be effectively mapped in multiple ways, and believing that only one way is best can be a detrimental mindset. That's for another time though. These methods may be impractical for new mappers, but that's only for finding free mods. Modding supply and demand imbalance is the problem, so even if you're not an expert, poorly attempting mod for mod exchanges is the most beneficial way to receive mods. It doesn't matter the method, mod recs, modding queues, or private conversation. All are equally terrible for receiving free mods, and therefore all are equally effective when it comes to mod for mod. It takes effort, but even if you suck at modding, which you do, it'll only help in the grand scheme of things. You'll get mods in return and the chance to analyze other people's maps, which can be just as useful. As a new mapper who hasn't proven himself to be worthy yet, you've got next to no chance of receiving free mods. So despite it being hard, mod for mod is the best way to go. Well, at the moment that's the best. Modding v2 may solve this modder shortage, since there's more incentive to write shorter mods than the current forum posts. But really that's something better judged at a later time. Hopefully soon. I really hope it's soon. Anyway, thanks to these guys for supporting this video, and I'll see you next week.